Okay, welcome in. This is Michael Burns, formerly of Wisecrack, now just independent in the Michael Burns channel. You are a former philosophy professor, and you make videos on philosophy, politics, and culture. And we know this because we have stolen a lot of your content. And what I mean by that is transformed it legally under fair use doctrine. And I admit to stealing nothing, but I've always really appreciated you because I like philosophy. You know, I did it in undergrad before I went to law school. And I have always felt like there's been an impoverished way that people talk about these topics. Like they refer to theory as if it's like, you need to read theory without actually explaining the ideas they're trying to reference, which implies to me they didn't actually read it. And so I've always found you as a valuable source for thinking about these things deeply. Welcome on to the Central Committee stream.
Oh my God. I mean, I've watched many times. So fun to be here. And you have a good community. I can always like, I not to be judgmental, but I judge people, especially streamers, by how their community act when they show up other places. And I always have really good interactions with folks from your community. So shout out to all of you. And definitely one of the communities where people reach out often to be like, hey, Bug Mike, talk to him. So good to be here.
Great job, chat. Keep bullying people.
But it's like nice bullying, which I love.
Yeah. I can say that, like, I believe that you should be the meanest member of your community as a creator. You know, like your community should be kept in line by you, and they shouldn't be going around doing anything you don't want them to do. And you can judge someone exactly by what you said based on how their community acts and how interacting with them, both positively and negatively, you know, how you're treated. And so I think I have one of the better communities. So I appreciate that, Glaze, to start.
Because you're ruthless to them. You put them in their place.
Well, it's just like, you need to demonstrate the right way to behave, you know, and because they have a parasocial connection with you. And so you have a responsibility to use that, you know, ethically and to model the correct way of interacting with other human beings. I think that's pretty common sense, right?
I think so. I mean, that's like a thing I'm kind of obsessed with these days is how people like act in their interactions with other people that make stuff on the internet and how that facilitates their communities. You know, I'm sure you've had interactions like this before as well, but a thing I used to like to do, sometimes I don't do it as much, is respond to really trollish, aggressive comments with humanity. Yeah.
I do. I just find I do both.
Yeah.
Sometimes I tell them they're never going to find love. And sometimes I like tell them, you know, it'll be okay, man. How have you experienced being a content creator, especially a left-wing content creator?
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've rehashed the, you know, leaving Wisecrack, but the way that there's like YouTube has this industry where people are the faces of channels and really are who the viewers are coming to see, but they're secretly owned by some like corporation or conglomerate. And that separation between who's actually making the creative work and who controls the profit from it is really bad on YouTube. And so what do you think going forward we should do as leftists to make sure that we're not enriching like horrible corporations with the left-wing content? How do we prevent it being captured by capital?
Yeah. I mean, so like in one sense, you know, there was a period where it felt like for a lot of years at Wisecrack, we were more or less getting away with it. And by that, I mean, we were a part of a company that, I'm not exaggerating, friends, like really didn't know that we existed. So, you know, we had resources to make stuff. There was some minimal support we had from a corporate structure. We would get paychecks and health insurance. And like, there was a day where we were making a video about how CEOs shouldn't exist. And as I was in this room filming the video, the CEO of the company walked by and waved at me. And, you know, of course, he had no idea what I was saying in there. So I think that like, if people are in positions where some stupid company is paying you money to do shit, cool. However, I think that model's definitely in its dying days.
But what did he do? What did the CEO do, if you don't mind me asking?
What do you mean? What did he do like for his job, or what did he do in that instance?
Yeah, like, yeah. What exactly does the CEO of Wisecrack do all day?
Well, so we were a part of a company called Enthusiast Gaming, and it was it's like a Russian doll thing where like Wisecrack started by some guys who I still like very much. These dudes started a thing during a certain wave of like the YouTube boom. They got this channel valued at like way more than it was ever worth, and kind of cashed out to a smaller company that was still like fine. That smaller company then sold it to the big kind of stupid company. I don't know what the CEO of these places ever did because they just make bad decisions. I mean, like most media companies these days. And I think that like if I learned anything, and if the people I worked with learned anything, is if like you're in a position like that, the best thing you could do is use the opportunity to both form relationships with the good, creative, left-leaning people that you work with, and then B, take advantage in as much as you can of those platforms to then make your own stuff. I think that's what a lot of us are trying to do right now. But like, there's no future in that. Like, there's no future in corporate-owned YouTube streaming digital media spaces. Like, it's a failed business model and it doesn't work.
Well, I mean, I think what you're really talking about is 0% interest, period. Where, you know, companies were able to borrow money from banks or, you know, get it from VCs at basically 0%. And suddenly a whole bunch of ridiculous, non-viable products were able to be produced based on, you know, that paper valuation. And I think we're still in the kind of hangover from that period where our economy was totally built on this zero interest rate environment, resulting in all sorts of financializations of industries that honestly were already mature and just needed to produce a reasonable rate of return. You know, now we have to turn it into some sort of profit maximizing spiral. And you can see that in video games, you can see that in movies and television, you can see that even now on online content. And what I really love about Twitch and why I spent so much time building my community on Twitch is because I just got directly paid by the viewers, and that was kind of the way that it was set up. And obviously Twitch takes a ridiculous cut, but they, you know, the community of like, hey, we should give our streamer $5 or now $6 a month, created this base where I no longer had to worry about literally anything. I run 0 ads. I have no sponsors because I would rather just say what I want to say, including criticizing sponsors, without having to worry that I'm suddenly going to not be able to pay my rent. And
have you seen this recent reaction or critique against streamers and YouTubers who make money off of their audiences?
I mean, it depends on what you mean by make money off their audience, you know?
Well, okay. Yeah. So let me be more clear. So there's been, and I guess to an extent, I'm a part of this, but there's been like a recent wave of especially YouTube creators and especially sort of like philosophy, social theory, left-wing creators who have like made videos and said stuff to the effect of like, hey, this isn't working out that great financially. If you guys want to support me on, you know, Twitch or whatever. And there was a wave of videos last week from like really angry dudes who all looked like young Gen Xers who were very like aggro about people like getting money from their audiences or signing up for like Patreons or exclusive content or whatever like that. And it was this weird sort of moralism to me where it's like, okay, so people shouldn't do like corporate stuff or have sponsors or whatever, that's fine. But also it's bad if they get paid directly for their work by people. So like, what do we want? Like, you know, a bartering system or something?
They don't want anything.
Yeah, it's. I see someone in the chat who I think that Sean said, you know, holier than thou BS. But yeah, I think there's a weird, I guess like preciousness about money and stuff like that. But I think for leftist content creators, it's better to be upfront, because what is the whole thing that the corporate world does to it? It obfuscates like relations to capital, and we don't talk about salaries, we don't talk about money. So I like supporting people and watching content of folks where I'm just like, cool, my money's going to this person to keep making the stuff that they make that I like.
I think the biggest mistake the left makes in a general sense is constantly entertaining sea lioning or controlling incoherent bullshit that people throw against the wall. Like, I'll give you something that I've been saying recently is that if you're rich like me, they'll say you're a champagne socialist, right? You have it easy, you don't know what it's like to work. Now, I started off, you know, I've worked road construction, you know, so I was out there on 150-degree asphalt, you know, working road construction with my, you know, I know what hard work is. So just leave that aside. But the reason why I bring that up is if you're rich, you're a champagne socialist. If you're poor, you're envious, you're jealous, you're lazy, you're bitter. Yeah. Right. But if you're middle class, which means you have some, education, you got a decent job somewhere, you're getting paid, you have a little bit of savings, maybe you own your own home. Well, they'll call your boss. And they'll say, do you see what this person is saying online? And try to get you fired. So there is no position,
is so nuts.
There is no position you can have economically where it's now okay to argue for the left. If you're rich, you're out of touch. If you're poor, you're jealous and envious. If you're middle class, they're going to try to get you fired. And so basically what I'm saying is, anytime someone says you're a blah, therefore blah, that is invalid bullshit, and you should laugh at them. And it's the same thing with like people yell at me or Hassan or yourself, and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe you make money from the content. And it's like, I make money from the thousands of people who watch me every day. Some percentage of them, 10% or 20%, give me $5, $6 voluntarily. There is no ethical consideration. And you see this kind of like spin of like, oh, I'm going to investigate every single thing you do to try to see if you're having fun, because leftism equals you're not allowed to have fun. That's the mimetic idea they're trying to spread, right? Like leftists are scolds, leftists never have fun, leftists mean you can't enjoy a nice car or a good meal. It's just bullshit. Yeah. And it's just we should say that.
For sure. And I think to even like simplify it more, it's that conflation of, I guess, like individual behavior and structure. And I think some of these people are well-intentioned. I think some of these people are operating in bad faith, but there are just these constant conflations where people think they're criticizing this like structures of capitalism, like economic or political systems, but they end up just moralizing about the behavior of individuals, which then misses the point and falls right back into the, neoliberal ethos. And often when people are criticizing, the content creator for owning a car or something like that, they're sort of just sliding past the overarching economic system that's the real problem. And it's just a bummer to see that happening.
Yeah. And okay, so I have a subject that I wanted to pick your brain in. And if you want to throw in if you want to throw up a red flag and say, I don't really want to talk about it, that's fine. Or maybe we could keep it general and not name specific people. Yeah. But what do you think about the kind of rise of, if I'm butchering the philosophic term, please correct me.
Yeah.
But it's like conservative nihilism or pseudo-conservative nihilism, where they're just like, it's purely focused on enjoying and relishing in the pain of others, the arbitrariness of life, the arbitrariness of society. The creator I'm thinking of right now is a guy named Asmongold. I don't know if you've seen him.
I'm like vaguely aware. Someone I'm aware of, just like when like you or Hassan or someone else talks about them. So all of my experience with this person has been mediated via others.
Yeah, I mean, just to describe it, basically they think like it's might makes right. It's like a very, very like light, like, hey, I don't care if Palestinians die because their culture is inferior and it has nothing to do with me and it is what it is. Or when immigrants get, when protesters get arrested, he said, well, you shouldn't have blocked the road, so you should go to prison for that. And just this nonstop and kind of relishing in the pain of others, relishing in, school shooters or things like that. Like this movement on the right that kind of nihilistically enjoys and celebrates suffering for suffering's sake, and kind of says like, hey, I just want to see chaos. I just want to see harm. What do you think about this as like the new frontier of right-wing content? I don't know if you've encountered this shit, but it is huge.
Again, I kind of like all the worst stuff. I just let other people mediate for me. So whether it's you or Hassan or RM Brown or channels where people watch all the bad guys, so I don't have to. But there is a sense in the most broad way where I look at people like that as folks who don't, and I guess this is where the nihilism comes in, don't believe in anything. Like they don't believe in any foundational ideas. They don't have any principles. They don't have any hope. And ultimately they don't believe in anything inherently creative or I guess egalitarian about humanity as such. And it's really depressing to be in a position like that. And I think it's also really boring and dehumanizing both for it's like really boring. And I think not having an overarching project to it. Because to me, this sounds like these people aren't even like, and I hate to say that classical neoconservatives are in any way, shape, or form good, but this makes classical neoconservatism sound better because at least those are people that had a project. I mean, it makes me think of
they at least advocated for liberalism, right? You know, like they were saying liberalism is the best, so we need to impose it.
Like they literally like had a set of ideas, and many of the ideas were wrong. And they said, let's orient a political, economic, and cultural project around a set of ideals that we think is going to work out. Now, the ideas weren't good. It has not worked out. Yeah, I see someone in chat just said this, and I was just in my head thinking about John Goodman from Big Lebowski saying, at least it's an ethos. And I think that's, and the thing too with an ethos is like you can, it creates an object of critique. So even if you look at, you know, leftist versus neocon debates back in the day, you're able to have a conversation when someone posits a positive project, even if it's not a project that you align yourself with. But I worry, and again, you know so much more about these people. I worry that, but I worry because they don't have a positive project. There's not really a lot to critique in a substantial way, so they can avoid having to reckon with anything because they're just kind of like pigs in their own nihilistic shit rolling around all day.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is kind of the problem with debate culture as it existed on YouTube. Now, like, I got my start kind of by doing some debates on some stuff like, you know, Medicare for all and, you know, Bernie Sanders electability. And, you know, my background is somebody who I ran for office in 2014 and then I became a kind of like political operative, which is a standard path that people take where you run for office, then you work as campaign consultant. I worked at Committee of Urban Affairs. Just so I have like a campaign and policy. This is an archetype that exists in politics, right? And it was 2019 where I made this stuff as a lark because I turned away from the Democratic Party during the Bernie. Like I was in the Democratic Party before the Bernie Sanders movement came. And when Bernie's movement came, I said, this is it. This is where we should go. And I kind of stepped away from the machine Democratic Party because they were all in for the status quo that we still see. I bring up this context because I got into debates as part of my content creation. And one of the things I noticed very quickly is that a lot of the people that do debates don't actually do debates. Like they don't have a proposition that we are both, and they're the con and I'm the pro. It's more like they bring someone on and they determine based on how they're feeling that day if they're going to say this person's smart and therefore it'll be like a conversation, or say this person is stupid and just start yelling at them and trying to humiliate them or embarrass them. There's not really like an idea being posited, and then this is like, you know, we have stipulations or ideas and a moderator and mutual respect and any kind of like civility or comedy. It's just like, no, I agree. This person's a fucking arsler, or this person is like one of the smartest people, and they have really good takes. And so it's not really debate. I don't even really know how to describe it.
No, it's not. It's
how would you describe this phenomenon, like, just to make it more of an?
I mean, I see people in the chat. Someone said like sophist. Someone's talking about rhetoric. But yeah, in like a sort of boringly classical philosophical sense. You know, you have like sophistry, a form of rhetoric in which people are really good at speaking in a way that garners them attention and makes them seem smart. But ultimately, kind of like the nihilism you were talking about before, it doesn't aim at anything. And the interesting thing, when you look at like the earliest, at least in the Western canon, debates and like Socratic dialogues, they are all people having conversations aiming at something similar. They might not agree on how to get there, but you know, like Plato's Republic, a massive dialogue.
The foundational
the whole thing is they're just like, okay, what would a just city be? Exactly. And everyone's agreeing, like, we want the city to be just, so let's talk about it. We're gonna have different ideas. And I think that there's a lack of like an overarching, again, let's just say ethos or whatnot. And it becomes, I mean, you see this in like all the Jubilee stuff these days. It just becomes such a level of self-parody.
That's I'm talking about.
And it's really, really bad. You know, I've spoken to some of the people who are in the like Jubilee cast now, and some of the more left-leaning people there, I think, are like good, cool, nice young people who are trying to do something interesting. But you know, when you have like a debate, especially when they do their series where like two different groups of people are there, and it'll be like homophobes on one side, gay people on the other side. The question is, gay people shouldn't exist. Where's the middle ground? And it's like, what are you fucking doing? There's not a middle ground in these sorts of things. We're just creating pure spectacle. And you know, like spectacle sells and people want to see people yell and disagree. And I think it's just evolved into that. I do think if anything now, it's getting so bad that I feel like it is devolving into self-parody. Like I think a couple years ago, there was a little bit more of the sense of like that some of these people were serious. And
well, a lot of them got sex scandals now, you know, as well. So their personal,
that'll take you down.
Yeah, their personal brand, you know, messaging the 17-year-old Discord kitten, you know, well, you know, I've gotten credibility.
Yeah, people have gotten mad at me for saying this before about certain creators, but like I also think too, it's just always a sign. If no one serious wants to talk to you, you're probably not a serious person. And a lot of these people create their own debate ecosystems where the only time someone who's at all serious or interesting ends up there is like by mistake. When it's like some older academic or something who has no idea what this thing is anyways. Right. And you know, that's, yeah, I just think I desperately want there to be some aspect of political, like digital political culture that doesn't just evolve into that sort of form of debate. Because what worries me then is like, what happens when people that come up mainlining that sort of content and develop a political identity in that debate zone? What happens when they get involved with real politics? What happens if they get involved in organizing? How are they going to manage to navigate and compromise and listen to people that aren't like them?
This is something
that's their political formation.
This is something that I think you're a great person to talk about, which is I have kind of mentally realized that in this streaming, this is the era of streaming where live content directly to an audience is going to be the dominant form, and then short form content obviously as well, that Zohran Mamdani has deployed so well. And if you look at Mexico, if you want a hopeful example, you look at Mexico, where AMLO and Claudia Sheinbaum were able to get around the Mexican elites and do streams and do policy discussions with the Mexican people. And now hundreds of thousands and millions of Mexicans are constantly tuning in to their 3-hour policy discussions directly from.
I didn't know this till recently. I feel very naive. Okay. No, I didn't realize that Sheinbaum was a streamer.
Yeah, she's
really changed the game.
AMLO is the streamer. She's more of like, she does it because he did it.
Yeah.
But, and she's like the, you know, AMLO is the, like, how do I put this? Very rough around the edges populist. And she's like the ascended populist. She's like a PhD in climate scientist. And like, you know, she has got a very populist left-wing politics, but she's like the most perfect candidate you can imagine. And they're extremely popular. I think they had like, last I saw, they had like an 87% approval rating when she was fighting Trump. And the left is just completely dominating. They're just amending their constitution to make, you know, they're getting rid of the, you know, very conservative appointed judges in the Supreme Court. Like Mexico is winning completely on the left. They have a real populist center left project using these tools we're talking about. And I think with Zohran and in New York City, you could see a world where we do that here, where we go around the Democratic Party elites, we go around the media gatekeepers, and we build this really positive, cross-racial, you know, working class movement that draws in all the different disparate parts of the left. And he successfully did that, right? Working class people, immigrants, young people, and of course, you know, the overeducated intelligentsia like you and me, who we've struggled to make that coalition stick. And he did it, or he is doing it. And he's doing it because of that short form content. And I'll bring this all together in that I have accepted that stan culture is the culture of the internet. That we are going to have to accept that we need to have figureheads that are attractive and popular, are charismatic, and they're going to represent these movements. I don't want to call it Bonapartism, but it's got an element of that, right? Where you have a figurehead who's super popular, has the support of, so it's like almost you have this big, very popular figurehead with a populist grassroots base, but that person kind of embodies the ideas. And we've seen that with Bernie Sanders, right? Bernie Sanders embodies democratic socialism as an ideal in America, and I have my criticisms of him. And he's extremely popular. And he's the most popular candidate with self-identified moderates. The most popular politician in America is Bernie Sanders. The most popular politician with self-identified moderates is Bernie Sanders. And that only makes sense to me when you think of him not as a collection of just ideas, but also embodying those ideas. And similarly, we have that with Trump. So we have, to deal with what you're saying, which is how do we get people to like engage with these ideas? Well, we have to recognize that people deal with ideas as a stand. And just to bring this back to something you can comment on, like I think you saw that with the Democratic Party in 2024, is that a lot of Democratic Party voters who were mad at principled left-wingers against Gaza and genocide, they had a stand relationship with Kamala. It wasn't based on like political ideas. It was based on I like her and what she represents to me. And you are blocking a, black woman from succeeding. And why do you care about this policy so much?
Yeah, I mean, the Kamala thing is interesting because like a really vapid person politically and ideologically. So when people were really into Kamala, it's like, what are you like really into? You're either into the fact that you think like she's cool, sure, or you're just really into the fact that this is someone who's not Donald Trump. Okay, sure, why not? But I think the stand thing, and maybe to even be a little more broad there, the overall sense of parasociality is like clutch. Because think about like who was the one person that was a part of the last election that people liked? It was Tim Walz. Why did people like Tim Walz? Because he just seemed like a real guy.
Well, he went out there and he spoke unguardedly.
Yes, and he did, and when he spoke at the convention, what did people react to with Tim Walz? Like his
the best speech at the convention, by the way.
Yeah. And then when people like when they cut to like his kid and his sons crying, like that just seemed very real. And I was actually the week before they picked him, I was in Minnesota visiting family, and at that point, it didn't seem like it was gonna be Walz. All of these like very centrist, moderate, by no means radical folks I know in Minnesota and family up there love that guy, are obsessed with him.
But then they turned him into a eunuch.
They did.
So that's what happened.
And they didn't let him be a person. But I'm just saying, like, that's what the thing we like in politicians, the thing we like in online personalities. And again, like, I think the ability to easily articulate what someone's about is really clutch. Zohran did a really good job of that because, and this was like in the Bernie campaign in 2020, he did a really good job of that as well. Anyone could give 3 to 4 bullet points, describing that person's project. You believe the stuff that they said. And Bernie's different in this way, but a lot of the younger folks also just seem like a good hang.
Oh yeah,
and that's what we want. We want people that seem like they are good hangs. And that's why, like, looking at the like Democratic roster for the coming years, not a lot of good hangs. Who wants to hang out with Gavin Newsom? He seems like someone who's gonna like put you in a basement and skin you.
So, okay, I'm gonna give you my personal spin, which I don't know that a lot of other people have looked at. But I think the reason why Zohran did so well isn't just that he's a good hang and he's hot, which is all true, and he's intelligent and he's got good policies.
All true. Yeah.
It's that he's got sharp elbows, in the sense that he went to yell at the guy who was lading ice when people tried to browbeat him into saying globalized intifada is terrorism. He said no, and he actually was willing to. He had that angry gear. He had that fight back. It wasn't just like I'm everybody's friend. It was like, I'm really cool. I'm fun to hang out with. But if you fuck with me, there's gonna be pushback. So he had because he didn't cave. Range. He didn't cave. Exactly.
And I think that's the thing that a lot of Democrats do is like the second that they get pushback, they immediately cave or concede. And I think one of the best examples of that with Zohran was, his interview on Colbert was so good because Colbert just like, basically did the like, so you're Nazi, right?
Studio question. Studio notes came in, you could tell.
Yeah. And the way that Zohran, like, he didn't flinch. He didn't get defensive. He calmly explained his position relative not just to talking points, but to experiences that he had had. And then you have like Brad Lander next to him, like a very outwardly Jewish politician who is a little more, towards the center than Zohran.
Who served as body double or bodyguard, he stood in front of the bullets.
But, and you have him there being like, yeah, exactly. I don't see eye to eye fully, but what he's saying makes sense. Like, you can just be a principled person and not give in to everything. And that's, this is the most cliche thing to say. because we all know this, of course. But, it's just that example of the Democrats constantly conceding, constantly not just standing on any sort of business, while the Republicans have done that so successfully for over a decade now.
Can I back you up on this? Because
please do.
For me, the moment when I realized he was a generational talent was during his, well, actually, I've actually supported him for 5 years. Because he first got on my radar because he actually, ironically, he made a video for the Gravel Institute.
Yeah, that's the first time I saw him as well.
And it was on Vienna housing. Now, I lived in Vienna. My longtime partner is Viennese. Mm-hmm. And so I know about the Gemeingebau and the housing and the public transit and the no homeless and the, 60% of people live in social housing and it's the most livable city in the world. And it works really well and there's no problems and they have rent control and they've had it since the mid 90s. And there's plenty of abundant, high quality housing for working class people at low rent. And what's different between Vienna, and it's the fastest growing German speaking city and all sorts of other shit. So all the points that people try to make against these policies, we have a city that we can look at and it has succeeded. And they've had socialist mayors for 100 years, other than when the Nazis were in charge. So yeah, like we have these things that exist. So when he brought that up, and I'm a big advocate of studying our own socialist history, both here and abroad. When he made that video and he brought that up, I was like, this guy is fucking, I got to watch this guy. And so the moment I saw his first, mayoral campaign ad, I was promoting him. And the reality is about him. And what made me really like him is when he was asked, do you believe Israel has a right to exist? Instead of looking like he was caught, he said, I believe that it has a right to exist as a state with equal rights.
Yeah.
And all he did is he said, he went right after the heart of their point, which is they believe you need to say that Israel should be an apartheid state where Jewish supremacy rules under color of law. And instead of debating about Jewishness or debating about this other things, he got to the heart of the disagreement. We believe in pluralism. We believe in freedom of conscience. We believe in equality. So I believe in an Israel where everybody has equal rights. And they are just completely fucking flummoxed because they can't argue against it. And instead of being as you said, accepting that frame and acting defensive or acting like he believes in something that's controversial, he actually promoted his most controversial take as common sense, and they were completely defeated. And that is the talent. He is able.
Here's a question I have for you, if you don't mind me asking, because you know more about the insider political stuff. I mean, how realistic is it that they're going to take him out? You know what I mean? Not take him out, but you know what I mean?
You mean
it makes me very nervous. Yeah. Because it feels, because just reading about it, it seems like on the one hand, I read something yesterday that was from a bunch of real estate investors in New York. And it sounded like they were starting to soften up and be like, it seems like this might happen anyway. So we're going to go with it, maybe throw some money at him. But then on another side, it does feel like a lot of powerful Democrats have really coalesced around not letting it be him and supporting an abusive piece of shit instead.
Couple things. First of all, I think they're dead scared because if you look at the data, and this is what I always try to do. I try not to just be in my own intellectual world. I'm constantly talking to regular people. I'm constantly looking at other people's point of view. I recognize, if you think about politics as much as I do, you are a freak. This is the first thing whenever I was hiring organizers and training field organizers or training people new to professional political work, I would say to them, if you think about politics every day, you are weird. If you think about politics every week, you are a weirdo. And so you need to accept that you are in a different bubble. If you're posting about politics or tweeting about politics multiple times a month, you're a fucking weirdo. And it's okay to be a weirdo. It just recognize that you need to get outside your bubble and start talking to people that don't have the same preoccupation of politics as a hobby that you do. And so I do this preamble just to say, I look at the data, I talk to regular people, and what I look at Zohran is he's actually tapping into where the rank and file actually is. This is his strength. His strength is he's not actually leading on these issues. He's actually just coalescing. He's taking figurehead status for ideas that are already mature. And what's mature in the Democratic Party is to stand up to Israel and to sympathize with Palestinians more than Israelis. There's unbelievable amount of evidence at this point that it is a tiny, only between 10 and 50% of Democrats support Israel at this point. There is a strong disapproval of Israel. So he's coalescing something that already exists. Same thing with all these other things. Anti-billionaire. I mean, 80% of people support that. You know, go down the line. He's standing in places where there's a massive gap, massive demand, massive gap. And that is to say, I expect them to do everything they can to destroy him using the Corbyn model. But I don't think they have the juice.
Well, and wouldn't it just be...
And they don't have good candidates to run against him either. They have Eric Adams and Andrew Cuomo, which are heavily flawed. Horrible. I think he's going to win.
And I do think strategically, it would be a really bad look if the Democratic Party so brazenly kneecaps someone who represents all of the things you just said. It provides so much more fuel to the fire of, hey guys, these are really just a bunch of billionaire dick lickers who don't give a fuck about working people anyways. And they're showing you that right now.
So if I've ever made any errors in my advocacy, it's not making clear the distinction between the quote Democratic Party and Democratic Party voters or people who identify as Democrats. You see what I mean? Like I have sometimes been like the Democratic Party is blah, 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 blah. And I think a lot of people feel like you're attacking them as opposed to as a political operative, what I mean is the political operatives, the elites, the consultants, the senior members of the party. They believe that. That's what I mean when I say Democratic Party. I don't mean the millions and millions of people that vote once every couple of years.
Same.
Like, you know what I mean?
To be clear, yeah.
So,
well, and of course, too, the people that vote every couple of years, like we are pretty disempowered. You know, I'm not taking it out on the voter who doesn't have a lot of say in this whole thing anyway. So shouts to voters.
The other thing is they're right about something really important, which is that the Democratic Party is the only alternative to the Republican Party.
Yes.
And as much as the problem, in my opinion, the reason why the Republicans have been so successful is because of the Democratic Party's failure to offer opposition, both rhetorically, ideologically, and physically. The Republican Party is an existential threat to the world. Noam Chomsky, who I have, again, criticisms of, but I like a lot of his work as well, said that the Republican Party is the most dangerous political formation in human history. And I agree. And I think you're seeing it. Like, they're actively trying to put extra taxes on renewable energy products. They're trying to subsidize oil and gas. They're creating a Gestapo where they're going to increase ICE agents by 5 times. They're demolishing cities and education funding, and they're this represents an existential threat to humanity.
And I'll say this in case some people watching have been this guy as well. I've been the guy before who's really thought are they really that different? They're both two parties controlled by capital. One has a slightly different cultural set of values. It could do some bad stuff, but this is proving that position very wrong. I did not have, concentration camp in the Everglades on my prediction card for this year. Much of the stuff that's happening is just so it is on another level.
I don't think you're very wrong. And this is me trying to to refine my thing. I don't think you're very wrong to say they're the same. I think the problem is there's a lot of actually good Democrats that do exist, even in political office.
Yeah.
The problem is those are the people that a lot of people look at as leaders, and they are not. They are AOC does not have Democratic Party institutional power at all. She has a seat she won, and she's got a big social media following, and she's popular on media, but she does not have Democratic Party institutional power. None whatsoever, because they hate her. And if they could, they'd destroy her, but they can't. So they tolerate her existence because they're forced to. But the Democratic Party itself is an active collaborator with Donald Trump fascism, and they aren't that different. Andrew Cuomo and Eric Adams are Trump supporters. They are. They are collaborators with Trump. They are not fighting Trump. And, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, they've always, Barack Obama, Joe Biden, they all said, we want a strong Republican Party. And that has been their mantra.
That was great.
So you're right to feel that way. They are the same, but it isn't every Democrat, which is the confusion that people have.
And we do, and again, it's hard. The older one gets, the harder it is to feel hopeful. But the Democrats have a shocking amount of like solid people in office. Many of them don't have power. But even in the past year, I've been like, oh, fuck yeah, Chris Murphy, guy who's saying some stuff, someone who's there.
I'm a little bit harsher against the like social liberals than most people because I think they're very fraudulent, to be honest. But
yeah, I mean, I like that they say stuff that we can at least hold them accountable for. But the thing about Mamdani that makes me excited is like there are other candidates out there with a similar ilk and ethos that people are excited about. Like, and I know that she's going to be facing a tough race, but like my friend, have you talked to Kat Abu-Ghazaleh?
Kat and I are in discussions. I criticized her a couple weeks ago because her fucking dumb campaign manager, I'm gonna tell you this, her dumb campaign manager was like subtweeting Zohran or being like, he won't condemn globalize the Intifada. Yeah. So I was super pissed. I saw that. And I always tell the truth about everyone. This is sorry everybody, but you should know this about me. So I saw that. I said, I called them out. I quote tweeted him and I said, hey, does Kat know that her campaign manager is doing this? So, and this is what I like about Kat. She reached out to me, texted me. She said, hey, we're going to talk about this, blah, 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 blah. Because she's Palestinian. And I was like, there's no way she would have authorized this statement. Like, no. And she has a difficult tightrope to walk. I'm reasonable. I'm not a complete asshole. Yeah. But I'm also not going to let people the day before the elections, do this like, oh, he's anti-Semitic thing because he supports Palestinian protesters. No, and it's not something. Yeah,
I didn't see that.
Yeah, of course you did, but it's fine. So I like Kat.
But all I have to say is I like Kat, and I think that it's and again, we'll see what happens. But I'm excited that there are people out there running, and I do think, and this is going to sound very libbish of me, but one of the hard things is that I think a lot of folks feel so disempowered and disenfranchised from the political process that the thought of ever participating, and you've been in this process yourself, so you know about this, is very scary, overwhelming, whatever.
No, so the Democratic Party hates you. Like, let me tell you an anecdote. But that's what I'm saying. Yeah, go ahead. Go for it. Sorry.
Well, no. All I was going to say is I think that it is nice too. So I sat in on Kat's. She had some Zoom office hours a few weeks ago, and I awkwardly sat in on it as someone who has nothing to do with her campaign or that district of Illinois. But a few different people called in to chat with her who are young people. One person was from Pennsylvania. I think another person was in Illinois, who are like trying to run and do stuff and are looking at that as a model. And I find a small amount of hope in people seeing the crack of possibility for them to participate in the system.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, hope is, there's the Gramsci quote that I always lean on, which is like pessimism of the intellect, optimism of the will, which means that we should judge the world as it exists, but in our heart is an quenchable flame of ambition. Yes. You know what I mean? So but that's not really how people are. You're a weirdo if you're like that. Most people need to have a feeling like there's momentum, like that their efforts are bearing fruit, which is very normal, right? And I feel like Zohran is giving that space. And the Democratic Party establishment is weaker than it's ever been. So I feel like, in many ways, I've made this comparison before. Maybe it's a cold take that you've heard before, but I think of Bernie Sanders as the left's Goldwater, which is a person who brought these ideas to the fore, started to organize a very passionate, cadre of strong supporters that are building up these institutions behind the scenes. Obviously, he wasn't able to do it all and win in the same couple cycles, but he created all of these, inheritors of his viewpoints that are going to carry it to the mainstream. And then it'll be the second bite at the apple, which was Ronald Reagan for the conservative movement. We're going to have somebody, whether it's AOC or who else, who carries that through to fruition and actually wins. And I think Zohran is part of that greater Bernie Sanders bounty and DSA itself. Like, those are the institutions that are building themselves up with these victories. And that is what's going to carry us on to, greater things than we even think are possible. I think the other thing, and just to close this loop, one of the dumbest arguments I consistently hear is about political plausibility. The one lesson you should learn from Donald Trump is we have no idea what is politically plausible. Okay. don't let people say, oh, I like your ideas and your policies make sense and they work, but I don't think it can get it through the Senate or X, Y, and Z thing. That is not a valid critique of an idea or a movement, because a lot of ideas and movements that you think are impossible happen. You know, in my own life, I saw the way gay people were accepted as a 41-year-old. When I was growing up versus seeing that the way that attitudes towards gay people have changed fundamentally over that short period of my life, something that got accomplished, this year would have been impossible to imagine 25 years ago. And 25 years is an eye blink in the course of history.
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, I think, not to get overly philosophical or esoteric there, but if I have like any sort of philosophical framework or position that I abide by, it's that often politics and political philosophy is like thinking about the impossible stuff when it happens. And so many of the political, social, cultural movements that we all look back on now as these cool foundational, formational things, like before the thing happened, it was impossible. And it's the sort of collective will of individuals who want to try to do an impossible thing that makes stuff happen. And I think when one loses that sight, when one falls into the trap of like, we can only do things that are pragmatically possible relative to that which has come before via minor, changes here and there, you've already lost.
That makes me curious. How do you describe your political outlook or philosophy? Where do you place yourself with these labels? What do you put up on yourself? Like, I'll start off with myself.
Yeah.
So you have a little space, Yeah. Like the term that I hate is called a centrist Marxist, which, because nobody knows what that means, but it basically is referring to revolution versus reform. And I kind of look at the way Lenin talked about it, which is reforms that are non-reformist reforms. Like, reformism is the idea that we will achieve this through bourgeois electoralism alone. I don't think we're going to get socialism by doing elections and electing Zohran Mamdani and AOC, but it's about creating space to allow class consciousness to thrive and class conscious politics to achieve victories so that optimism can grow. That will lead to revolutionary change in the course of history. So I am not against revolution. If revolution happens, I'll be jumping on the barricades. But I also don't think we should look down on participating in elections as purely, capturing this energy and focusing it back into the bourgeois Democratic Party. I think that's way too simplistic. It doesn't understand the way that political movements tend to work and operate. And just, in my study of history, it seems that revolutions usually succeed in periods of frustrated reform, not in periods under crackdowns and right-wing retrenchment. It's rather, the Bolsheviks won from the Mensheviks and from the provisional government. They didn't seize power from the Tsar. Lenin was able to return to Russia because of the provisional government and the Germans letting him do it, not because, he didn't lead a revolutionary vanguard from, Switzerland. So we need to have people like Zohran in power to make more revolutionary demands. So I kind of consider myself, a hybrid between, some sort of more revolutionary socialist and a, Demsock scumbag.
Yeah. I think that makes sense. No, that does make sense to me because I come from a world where I spent a lot of years in academia, and in academia, everyone is a bloodthirsty revolutionary communist who only believes in the most radical theories. And I say this as someone who has been this person. So if you're that person, yeah, I am you. I love you. But so I've been in that world, and I've seen how it's kind of easy to espouse those ideals when you're and too, I think it's great to teach and research about the hardcore stuff so they can give us an orientation. But I've seen also what happens, and again, I have been this person, when the academic Marxist starts organizing or getting involved politically, and you see the absolute contradiction between I read a lot of Lenin and I'm organizing a tenants union, very different things. So theoretically, I'm in the most boring way possible, a Marxist with revolutionary proclivities,
of course.
But practically, I think that a lot of what we can do and should be doing is create the groundwork for revolutionary activity, which we're not in right now. And don't get me wrong, if there was a good model of revolutionary political praxis or a revolutionary oriented party that had power in this country, I'd be all for it.
Oh,
but
me
friends,
too.
it doesn't exist.
Yes, it does not.
And we have to accept that it doesn't exist.
Well, the reason why it doesn't exist is we have an incredibly powerful political police.
Yes.
And so if you try to do something like that, they're going to find you and disappear your ass to federal prison for the rest of your life. And, you know, you'll be writing letters.
Yeah.
Like, that's the reality. Or they'll just kill you. And they've done it many, many times. So, like, the idea that, oh, we're just not being pure enough in our ideology it does not bear, you know, you're not actually listening to what revolutionary leaders of the past have said, which is that you need to really understand the practical logistics of what you're trying to accomplish in the real world. Yeah. Like, how are you feeding the troops? That's not in the book.
No. So I think that, like, and I think that we can all maybe accept that that it is okay and it's not contradictory to both, again, be someone that is ideologically and theoretically a revolutionary Marxist and in very practical, on the ground terms, pragmatic about identifying points of contradiction at the local and national level and nudging things in whatever direction are going to put us in a better position long term. And that could be like even stuff like education. Like, you know what you're not going to have? You're not going to have a revolutionary vanguard in a country that decimates their system of education. Not going to have that. Right. If people can't go to the doctor, if everyone is in debt because of education or healthcare, if people can't get around or use transportation. So I just think there's a way that, like, the important thing is maybe sometimes one can look at those who see kind of social democratic reform as the end game and be like, oh, I don't want to be like them. But you can be on the same journey. You're just sort of setting the table for the meal that is to come. And I think that's okay.
Yeah, yeah. And I also don't think anybody thinks it is the end game. I think it's like,
I hope not.
It's like, give a mouse a cookie, you know, and then we'll ask for a glass of milk. Like, we're not asking for this shit to stop asking for shit. We're going to take it, improve our positions, and then do more. You know, it's like an army wins a battle, then therefore they take over a region. They now have the access to the resources of that region to mount further campaigns. Like, that's the whole point of what we're trying to do. And to give like a more practical historical example, it's like the Vietnam War, right? Like the radical position was to join the war on the side of North Vietnam, right? You know, and to purge the colonizers and to purge their sycophants of the South Vietnamese government. But what the North Vietnamese actually needed us to do is pull out. And similar in Gaza, obviously I'd love to do a humanitarian intervention into Tel Aviv, but the reality is what the Palestinians need us to do is withdraw American support, diplomatic, economic, military, from Israel, and that will accomplish the goal. And as members of the American political family, it's our job to create as many politicians that are going to say no to Israel as we can. And so I don't care what kind of communist you think you are. Your job is to get people like Zohran Mamdani in every fucking office you can, because that's what's going to give the global South the room to breathe and protect against, you know, the American interventions that are so actively killing people. And so I think that is like the kind of practical example of, hey, North Vietnam was able to win the Vietnam War because we stopped intervening. And similarly, that should be our project as far as Palestine and Gaza, which is just pull the U.S. empire back and give these spaces room to resist on their own.
And maybe to tie this back to something we were talking about before, I do think then this is where there's a political value in stuff like what's the word I'm looking for here? Sorry, I got distracted by a comment in the chat. Yeah, by propaganda in the chat. But I think there is a value in political education in a broad way. I think that there's a responsibility that folks like yourself and myself and other people with a platform has to not create political fandoms, but to really work hard to both better understand systems of power ourselves and help people better understand those systems of power. When I look at some of the, I guess, more liberal coded political media at their worst, they just create little, like, so for example, I like baseball.
Olivia Juliana,
But I listen to like podcasts about a baseball team I like, and all the people that host those podcasts, they're often wrong because the baseball team sucks, but they want to be like, but they're going to be good. That's fine when it's baseball. It's not fine when it's politics. It's not fine when it's like a media infrastructure that kind of just surrounds the core of the Democratic Party leadership. So, and to get back to the debate thing, when digital political culture isn't about education, but it's about entertainment in terms of debating, fighting, point scoring, all that sort of shit, all that's happening is people are less and less informed and less participating in dialogues and conversations that are going to help them understand stuff. Right. And I know for me, like, that's the reason, like, I made a horrible life choice and stayed in school for a really long time and went in the debt to study philosophy, is because I had the experience of being like, holy shit, some of these ideas actually make sense of things that are happening.
Right.
I'm currently on this big Frederick Jameson kick. I have a lot more videos coming out where I'm going to be talking about stuff that he does, but he has this concept of like cognitive mapping, which sounds kind of heady, but is really just like the idea that capitalism and neoliberal culture make it really hard for us to see the connections between all the stuff that's happening. Right. So what we need is a map that shows us that. Yeah. And like, that's such an important pedagogical project. And I do think that's an area, and this is to get back to like the first thing we talked about when I came on. That's such an important part about like what a left media ecosystem can be. That's more than stand culture. That's more than infighting. That's more than like telling people what team you're on or something.
Yeah, I think that for me, the analogy of team sports is very apt. But I also think, and this is to the credit of Gen Z and millennials, and I want to make this generational because I think the generations are also material. Because people sometimes on the left will criticize you if you talk about like, oh, this is happening in this generation and that generation. But, oh, we should only be talking about class and material, reality. And it's like, well, these generations had common shared experiences. They have common shared, frames of reference. And so they tend to have coalescing views on certain things because of the life that they lived was separate and different than the life that, say boomers did. And a lot of your politics can form up in your young adulthood based on the conditions that you're currently experiencing. Mm-hmm. And then you kind of harden around those positions. And I think our generations are much more skeptical of pure stand culture around politicians. I actually think it's older generations that are actually more in that model, the mass media model. Whereas our generations, like the reason why they were so excited about Zohran is because of his policies. It wasn't just because he's good at making shorts. What was in the shorts was substantive and was speaking in a way that they don't get from other politicians. And so they were able to be smarter. I actually think that our generations are breaking free of those stand culture problems that we're talking about a little bit more than older generations are. I mean, like, look at the way that older generations talk about politics. They talk about like, oh, James Clyburn endorsed Cuomo.
Yeah.
Bill Clinton endorsed Cuomo, and there's not substance behind it, right? And in fact, people were yelling at AOC to endorse Zohran earlier and Bernie to endorse him earlier because of his policies. They were not saying, I'm going to hang back until AOC endorses. They were saying, hey, AOC, you better fucking endorse Zohran or else. It was the opposite of the stand culture that you're talking about.
Well, and I think that was like, again,
helpful and positive.
Yeah. I mean, one of the best parts, obviously, and it ended in tragedy, of course, of the 2020 Bernie campaign was the way in which, to an extent, the ideas and the policies became the star. Like when I would see, in LA, people wearing Bernie shirts, the shirts all said like Medicare for all, college for all, whatever it might be. But like, there was like,
I have that
4
shirt.
or 5. Yeah, I forget which one I have one of them, but I think that's kind of what we need, and better to have people standing for political principles and ideas that transcend individual personalities. Because again, and we've seen this, whether it's a Kamala, whether it's a Mayor Pete type, when people just stand the person, it's so empty and doesn't go anywhere. And doesn't push things.
I tend to think of, how politics is going to go for the rest of our lives based on how Democratic primary voters react to the AOC versus Buttigieg primary. If the Democratic Party picks Pete Buttigieg or someone like him, like Andy Bashir, we are fucking cooked. I mean, and I will actually become kind of a doomer for the rest of my life because those people believe in absolutely nothing. Like, for example, Pete Buttigieg, there was a famous thing when he was running for president, which the the absolute gall and narcissism of being the mayor of the fourth largest city in Indiana and being the worst statewide performer in the Indiana, when he ran for treasurer, he was the worst Democrat in the entire state as far as statewide in Indiana. So just a total political dud. The arrogance of going to the DNC and, failing horribly, except raising $500,000 from donors, and then running for president. The gall and hubris of that.
Wait, I see people in the chat asking this. I'm curious about this. Can you say more about why you equate Bashir with Buttigieg? Because okay, I know that you pay more attention to this, but because Bashir, I've had a soft spot for Bashir.
See, I don't have soft spots.
And that's good. That's principled. I'm soft.
Okay. I just, because I'm involved in local Democratic politics for over a decade, I understand that there's certain things that Democrat politicians at the local level do that mean absolutely nothing. And one of them, for example, is like having the support of labor or saying like kind of generically pro-labor shit as a way of like signaling that they care about the trade union movement. And all Democrats at the local level do that. But then when you're in an actual position of power, what do you actually achieve? And I think what I like about Andy Bashir, I think Andy Bashir is smart in the sense of like not throwing trans people under the bus and recognizing but that is the exact type of Democratic Party that I'm worried about, which is they are going to throw out kind of like what people have called social issues that are important, but fundamentally do not question capital or question the economic structure of our society. And they use that to signal progressivism that does not exist. It's like, I'm supporting trans people, and then you fill in the 9 other progressive views that you have because he's signaling progressivism with that take. But in reality, when you actually examine him, he is a Nepo baby, son of another governor. It's the same thing with Gretchen Whitmer. Gretchen Whitmer, her father was the Blue Cross Blue Shield CEO.
Great company.
And then the reason why she ran for office, and you can go Google this and find it, is her mentor is the current Blue Cross Blue Shield CEO. He recruited her to run. And the reason why is because there was a Bernie Sanders candidate, Abdul Al-Said, who is a huge
I remember that guy.
He's running for Senate.
He was a real one.
He's running for Senate this time. So
he's running again? Awesome.
Yeah. But she was basically recruited by the Blue Cross Blue Shield CEO to stand against him and basically block a Medicare for all candidate for governor of Michigan. So if you are going, oh wow, she ate chips on fucking TikTok sluttily or whatever people were like, promoting. I'm not saying this misogynistically, just the way it was described by others. That's not real politics to me. Like, you have to be somebody who is advocating for real progressive policies beyond gestures. And listen, he's great for Kentucky. I'm not saying if I was in Kentucky, I'd be an Andy Bashir supporter big time. When we're talking about the National Democratic Party and the direction we need to go as a country, I think we need to end the idea of like some guy with a Southern drawl who said one nice thing about trans people is going to be the progressive champion we need. And if you're a left winger like me, I'm going to be trying to destroy those people's reputation up until the point that we win whatever inter-party squabble we're having. They won't do the same. Like, they're not going to throw themselves in front of Mamdani. Has he spoken about Mamdani? Has he come out and said he supports him? No. You need to let these, like, if he does something like that, then I will maybe reevaluate. But until I see like real shit, I'm not going to let general good vibes, allow me to promote somebody like that. I just have a very hard-nosed perspective on the party fractures. I think that the left is too nice, and it's going to allow itself to get maneuvered into a Corbyn-like situation where we trust these people, and when they have power, I don't know how closely you followed that.
Oh yeah, I was living in the UK when that happened. Yeah, so sadly, I followed it a lot, and it sucked.
That's what the playbook they're trying to run with Mamdani. That's the playbook they're going to try with whoever the progressive person is in the primary for president 2028. I think it'll be AOC. Maybe it won't be. But we need to be
sorry. I like my audio cut out for a second. Did you say you think it'll be AOC in 2028?
Yeah. At least at the progressive side.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I think it'll be her.
I want to alienate this entire audience and
Go
you
ahead.
now. I want to say something that ensures I never get invited back and that I become an enemy of the Central Communities community. No, this isn't about AOC. I kind of think that the argument can be made that the best viable option is JB Pritzker.
I mean, listen, I've said that before.
Okay, so I didn't know your Pritzker take, and this is one that I find people are very hot and cold on.
The thing about Pritzker is,
I knew that people would get mad at me in the chat.
No, okay, I saw one person. The thing about Pritzker, like during the Veep stakes, I had Pritzker number 1, Waltz number 2, and I was very anti Bashir Shapiro as a Pennsylvanian. No longer, but I knew him when he was I've known Shapiro personally since he was a state rep, since he was a county commissioner for Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, which is north of Philly, like one of the collar counties. I've known him that whole time. He sucks. He is terrible. He seems practically a Republican. Terrible, yeah. A lot of his support comes from like moderate Republicans. There's this, you know, I could get really into the weeds with Pennsylvania politics and the history of moderate Republicans. But the point is, if it's somebody like that, we're fucking cooked. And the thing about Pritzker is maybe I just don't think he's got the juice. It's hard to be an anti-billionaire billionaire. You know, it's hard to be an anti-billionaire billionaire.
It is. It's a weird one because you can see the argument that like he obviously comes from the for folks that don't know, like the Hyatt hotel fortune, but he's in a way he's like a late blooming fail son in terms of being one of like the least successful members of his family. I think that there's
I guess think that can be true at this point.
But
Not
I guess
indicted Illinois governor, that's like fucking peak.
It's about as good as you can get for Illinois politics. But there is the part of me that, and you know, are you like from like Pennsylvania originally? That's in your DNA.
I'm an Air Force brat, but I spent my adult life in Pennsylvania, and I lived. I went to Pitt, and then I lived in Philly. I lived in Lehigh Valley. I lived in Harrisburg. So I've been literally I know the state like the back of my hand.
Okay, that's great. And the reason I say that is because, you know, I do think about the Rust Belt and the Midwest as incredibly important. For pushing things in a direction potentially on the national level.
But here's the thing about the Rust Belt, which I think is not understood by coastal elites, is that it's a very polarized place. It's not a moderate place. So the politics that Pennsylvanians have is either, you know, Summer Lee, socialist. She's the most left-wing congressperson we have in the country. Is the congresswoman a black woman from Pittsburgh, is the most left-wing congressperson. Comes from Pennsylvania. You look at Philadelphia, same thing. They have a very strong left. You know, they had the most famous George Soros DA, Larry Krasner, who is literally who did pro bono work for BLM. Yeah. Right? And he is the DA. And by the way, fastest decrease of homicides of any city in America during his administration. I thought
you'll never hear that though.
Exactly. Philadelphia has had the fastest decline of homicide in its history with the George Soros DA. But point is, the left so the Pennsylvania left is either like at far left, or it's like, oh, I think that we should, you know, KKK member right-wing Trump people. So by tacking to the center, you actually don't get any juice. Honestly.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't work, and it actually drives down your base. It's the party that actually drives up their base's excitement that wins Pennsylvania, not the other way around. It's not moderation that works. And Josh Shapiro is a rare exception because his candidate was literally the worst candidate that they've ever had. Like the guy he ran against for governor. So that, you know, it's like he ran against somebody who didn't have any money and was a weirdo.
Yeah. Well, to swing this back a little bit to Big Boy JB, then my only point there would be that I see a world where Pritzker has a little bit of the Walls juice, and that felt weird to say, and that he is someone who is in this weird sweet spot where younger, progressive, and left-leaning folks could get behind him, but Midwestern uncles can also get behind him. And I'm someone that has a lot of Midwestern uncles, so a lot of my electoral politics at the national level.
You're worried about the AOC with the Midwestern uncles.
Well, and my thing with AOC though is it feels like it's, I don't know. Yeah, and again, this is me talking to someone like you who's actually worked in party politics and gets the strategy side. Isn't it blowing her shot too early to run now? Shouldn't she like be in Senate first and like do some stuff?
Here's my general feeling. I hear you. I think that's how most political commentators would go. They're very loss averse. They're very risk averse.
Yeah.
But I tend to think that the people that make the big wins make the big bets. And when you line up the how far right the Republicans have gone and the kind of imperial presidency that they're creating with the kind of more abundantity of the centrists and the fact that they have no clear heir, this is a great time to make that big wild shot, because I actually don't think it hurts you. If you don't win, you're still, in your early 30s, run for something fucking else. Who gives a shit? But you're so unique and you're so separated from the way the Democratic Party has been going that there is a tremendous opportunity for unforeseen energy. And I also think that Zohran is making her a much better politician. I think the problem with AOC is that she leaned too much into the rad lib kind of Elizabeth Warren type, progressive, quote unquote.
Yeah. So you're saying like Zohran opens up the door for her to be the best version of herself.
Correct.
And not be like Warren-esque. No, it's a good point.
Warren-esque and also woke, annoying woke. Like Zohran is woke, but he's a good type. Like he says, okay, like trans issues are not something that we should be talking about as our main thing, because who gives a shit? It's 1% of the population. It's very important to the trans people and we care about them. And so the way he deals with them is he gives them a fucking amazing platform and position on their issue. And he talks directly to advocates for trans people and says, I have your back. I'm with you and I will defend you. But he doesn't make that his campaign, right? He makes it about those pocketbook issues. He makes it about, the issues that is motivating everybody. And I think that is exactly the type of advice she needs, which is like, how do I make this an economic populist first campaign and not I represent BIPOC, women, like if she does
you're winning me over here.
But if she does,
because I think if she goes for it, if she like actually follows that model and actually just fucking goes for it, that seems very doable.
He had a 0%, and he went for it.
I mean, and that's why like I don't want them to screw him, because it really feels like one of those.
They're gonna try.
I know, but it's like a symbolic domino that if that falls in the right direction, and in this, like he really wins and he at least has some level of success. Like obviously it's gonna be really hard. The NYPD is gonna do nothing like they did for
they're gonna blue flu or threaten it. They're gonna do all sorts of shit.
Yeah. But if he manages to stay in that position, if he manages to do a decent job in New York while also keeping a national profile, then like that steam could fuel some stuff. I just hate this thing though, where we always have to just be like, when there's like the one person that has some juice, we have to get so excited and put all of our hope on that, because it's so few and far between we get someone like that. It's sad. The chuds get so many people.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like, and I thank you for staying on. So, I mean, listen, I'm going to go.
Sorry.
I'm happy to go till noon. If you need to go soon, you let me know.
I'll say the only reason I'm going to leave before noon is because I start streaming at noon, and I'm going to have to go to the bathroom and eat a snack.
Okay, so what do you say to 11:30?
Let's do 11:30. Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, we extended it, chat, because I'm having a ball. I think with me. Also,
shout out to this chat. I'm having so much fun.
The chat's great.
Yeah. Like this is what you want to see. It's like healthy pushback, disagreement, some funny stuff, people who like baseball, but overall good vibes. Just you guys are doing it well. Great job.
Well, can we talk about how? Okay, just to close this AOC thing. Like, listen. Yeah. I also like Sean Fain. I like a lot of these movement economic populists. And I feel like there's a real demand for it. I have my criticism of AOC. I think the one issue I have with AOC is I think she's a little bit, what's the best way to put it? Henpecked. I think she's a little bit gun shy because she gets attacked from every angle all the time. Yeah. So that, you can only take so much of that mentally before you're like,
I would lose it.
Yeah. Like, because with her, she simultaneously gets like the most horrible psychosexual attacks from the right. She gets called like a fucking radical communist by her own party. and attacked constantly by them. And then also she has a brigade of people online who are like, I'm more left than AOC. AOC is a betrayer, trash. So it's hard. You know, you can only take so much of that. So I hope she could like gain hope from Zohran and just be bold and focus on pushing those strong progressive policies that are like attainable to regular people, like they can imagine it. And I think she's got a good shot. I think the left should go for it. And the reason, and just to close this up, and I'll give you why. We don't get very many chances because you need to have a situation where the left is not discredited for some reason, whether it's valid or invalid. You also need to have some sort of like backlash to the right. So the left seems more plausible because the right has failed so horribly. And the Democratic Party isn't locked down around a clear popular successor. So you don't usually line all those things up. And that's why 2028 is why she should go for it. Because let's say she does it and the Democrats win. Well, then that person's going to run for re-election. And then that person's going to have a VP. And then that VP is going to try to run and they're going to be the clear successor. So she's going to have to wait at least, 12 years, 16 years. And then maybe there won't be, there won't be the same kind of conditions. Like your life goes by fast is what I'm saying. Like, especially in politics. So you need to, when you have a shot that you feel like I am the best person to represent this faction of the party and my faction is more popular and I have this chance, you should take the shot.
I'm convinced. I came in a skeptic.
I got Michael,
and I'm convinced.
I'm convinced.
Let's do it. AFC 2028. Let's get some merch made up. Let's find a good campaign song.
Draft Fane, or it could be Sean Fane, like somebody who's out of left field. I just feel like the left needs to go all in and be ready to be a little bit dirty.
And you know what? I think another good reason now that I'm on your team with this one is with like the Bernie thing, right? In 2020, there was the specter of Biden. And even though a lot of us at a certain point convinced ourselves that he was too old, it wasn't him, early polling, yada, yada, you had a real insider Democratic Party guy, has been there for years. It feels like there's not anyone like that now to fuck it up if you did have enough momentum with a left-wing candidate, because like Whitmer, Newsom, Harris, like none of these people are OGs in that way.
The thing is,
Pete,
like,
I guess, but like
Pete is very popular with the I called it the hall monitor wing of the party, which is like the guy the people who sat at the front of the class, the center. But I'm sure you saw the poll, right, with like his approval with black voters. 0.
It was like negative 100%.
That's why she should do it, because it's gonna split the center. Like they're gonna have Pete Buttigieg is gonna appeal to this like upper class liberal who may be kind of skeptical of democratic socialism. But fundamentally,
and no one's going to be that committed to him though, where they won't bail.
Yeah, but he has no power. Option. What the fuck? He's not a governor. Yeah. He's not. He's no one that is actually like got pressure.
But it
on
seems
anyone.
like he'll be the guy. He'll be the guy that like Obama back channel some Netflix money to or something.
No, absolutely.
But that's it.
But I don't think I don't think he's got the juice. You're talking about Rust Belt. Pete Buttigieg, his 5'8" ass walking around, in Pittsburgh. Like I don't know if you ever saw him. The reason why I hate Pete so much is he went to like a UAW picket line, and it honestly looked like a Pinkerton detective asking them how long the strike lines were gonna last. You know what I mean? Like he was trying to come up with his McKinsey memo to how he could break UAW. Like he has absolutely no juice with regular people. He's purely like part of that intellectual, foam of the.
I mean, he's good at the thing that he does. Like he's a good spokesperson for party policy. He is good at, he's one of the only Democrats who's like good at going on Fox News, which is a skill. It's like a necessary evil.
Like there's two.
Okay. He's fine at it.
Okay, let me. This is one of my pet peeves, and I'm trying to create as many talking points for people to talk against him as possible. Let me try this one. Basically, he's good at Fox News for liberals watching clips on TikTok. He's not good on Fox News in the sense of like disrupting Fox News's propaganda to its audience, recruiting Republicans to the Democratic Party, shifting their, disrupting their fucking strategy for the day. He goes on, he gets some dunks on some person that he can clip and then post on TikTok so liberals can look at it and feel good. But as far as like what Fox News is trying to accomplish, he doesn't do good on Fox News at all. If anything, he's giving them content, and he fails to provide a compelling enough argument that will fundamentally question or shift the way the typical Fox viewer operates with politics. So like being good on Fox News to get clips on TikTok is different than being actually good in my world, which means change politics or cause.
Has anyone ever been good on Fox? Now
exactly.
I'm just wondering.
You can't be good on Fox News. That's my point. It's like going on, oh man, he's really good on Der Stürmer. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Yeah, like, wow, he's the best Jew in Der Stürmer. Like, that's not a good. That's not a good
so
example.
People in the chat are bringing up Bernie, and I will say, when they did the Bernie town hall on Fox News, he did solid.
No, but that's what being good on Fox News is, though. It's getting voters to come and watch him and then think of him as, and that's why he's like more popular with even Republicans than other Democratic politicians. Well, he's more popular with moderates. That's different.
The person who could be good in Fox News in that way would be Walls. The evidence I'll give you for that is when they did this More Perfect Union thing. Did you see this with Walls where he hung out? I just I was so pissed when that came out because that was after they like killed him and didn't let him speak publicly. But his ability to like shoot the shit with agricultural and industrial workers and like the look in their eyes and they were like, oh, this is like a real guy who gets the shit.
Oh yeah,
I do think was important. But
well, that's why that's why he is a politician, because he's able to do it. But I feel like that's like more retail politics than like the thing about Fox News is it's just propaganda.
Yeah.
You know, any win you get there is going to be so fleeting. And so what the Democratic Party should be doing is trying to figure out ways of like attacking News Corp and attacking Fox News at a systemic level. In the same way that Donald Trump has attacked universities, when it comes time for us, we should not apologize, and we should, you know, be even more forceful in like organizing unions and disrupting Fox News and disrupting, you know, these right-wing algorithms, and we should be henpecking and going after the algorithms and breaking up these big companies and, you know, nationalizing certain industries that are important to, you know, the national conversation. And we should be, you know, registering AIPAC as a foreign lobby group and doing the things that structurally will undermine our enemies with the same verve and vigor that is being done to us.
There's a comment that I like. I think it's Jessica in the chat. So we should bypass the mainstream media completely. I mean, yeah, I think that some form of doing that sounds good. That kind of
crediting it. Yeah.
Yeah. I better get going, but if I can encourage your audience to do one thing, guys, bully Mike to come on my stream sometime.
Yeah, sure. All right. Well, I will do that because I'm starting to post on other platforms as well, because I've always been like a Twitch only guy and I never really gave a shit.
Let's get you that YouTube bump.
Yeah,
buddy.
I gotta get the YouTube bump. I gotta get on there and maybe like double stream or whatever, because for some reason people just don't give a shit about Twitch. You know,
it's a weird like cultural thing, and I feel like there's like overlap between the audiences. I'm more of a YouTube person, but I think if there's ways that you can do some YouTube stuff where you're not stretching your production capacity too much, it's definitely worth doing. So we'd love to chat about that. We'd love to get you over there. All right.
Well, thanks for finally coming on. I appreciate you. And I hope the conversation was fun and not boring. All right, everybody, make sure that you are subscribing to Michael. Here's Michael Burns. Here's all of the link to the YouTube. And thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, and if folks are bored later, I'll be streaming over on my place later today. Thank you so much. I'll catch you soon.
See you soon. Peace.